if you don't take action on something in the mundane, because there's so much spiritual, so to speak, in the mundane, and yet there's a lot of stuff out there that tells us that spiritual is like, leave your body and get out and be up here and be really disconnected, and like it makes me dizzy to think about. But in reality, it's like, no, it's like very heart-centered, and it's very relationship oriented, and it's like, how can I just figure out who I really am and just be the best I can be? And that feeling is subtle at first, and then it's overpowering, and then you live it. And it's the most amazing thing, which I didn't have before.
Your network is your net worth. Come listen to some of the most successful people I know share invaluable knowledge, stories, and advice in real estate, business, and beyond. This is Weiss Advice. Whether you want to take your business or personal life to the next level, look no further. Welcome back to Weiss Advice. I am your host, as always, Yona Weiss. And today I have a very special guest, AdaPia Derico, who is joining us to, kind of shed some light on who she is and what she's been up to for the last couple of decades. Been amazing things. I mean, I've followed your story a little bit, just a little bit. I can't say a lot, but I'd like to give a little bit of a background to our guests as a somewhat of an introduction before, we start this conversation. But before we do that, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. Thanks, Jonah. Yeah, I'm doing great. It's a Monday. I'm not sure when this airs, but when we're recording, it's a Monday, and I'm actually feeling like really good on this Monday. So yeah, all is well.
Oh, very cool. I mean, listen, it's you got to feel good every day, but Mondays sometimes can be, especially if you're in a corporate world, but which you're not anymore, right? You kind of entrepreneur have gone off on your own and kind of make your own schedule.
Yeah, totally. Actually, it's true. Like most days are like feeling really good. And this just sometimes, sometimes my Mondays can be just back to back, like really, really kind of busy stuff. And so today feels a little more expansive. It feels a little more open. So it's nice to have a bit of space in the day and I've really been learning that with like not overbooking myself. So this Monday ended up being like, it just feels really spacious and good.
Yeah. Whenever I think like that, well, then I have to look at my schedule and why didn't I think of this 2 weeks ago when my schedule filled up? That I need this to happen today. But I totally relate. I've been going back to back to back today. But anyways, enough about me. AdaPia has, you've done a lot of different things in the real estate industry. Specifically, I'm fascinated by your involvement with the patch of land, which I remember that when I first got involved in real estate, and this was, going back about 5-6 years ago, that it was kind of a new, relatively new at that time, crowdfunding platform, but had taken off. I mean, from when I first got, and I was involved in hard money loans at the beginning and commercial financing. So it was like the front of my mind. So you worked as like an advisor and the chief marketing officer, involved from the early stages of helping to grow that company into the huge brand that it had become. So that's pretty impressive. I'd love to get a little more into that. And then, you've done a few other things. I don't want to give you, trying to play you down. But one thing that I am impressed is that now recently you have gone into real estate, right? As an entrepreneur, someone who's, kind of built their own fund, their own company, who is investing in real estate, affordable housing, which is an incredible topic. We talk to a lot of people on this podcast in that space. So I'd love to hear from you how you got, how did you get started in that space? Coming from the kind of corporate position into entrepreneurial to start your own company.
Yeah. Wow. So I started working in a bank when I was 18. So one of the big 5 in Canada. So I went really corporate, really fast, but I've always had a very entrepreneurial nature. I didn't know it. It came out a lot later. So when I was at that point in my early 20s, I had moved to Europe. I was working for a hedge fund in Switzerland, and I was always looking for operational inefficiencies or ways to improve things, because that's actually how my manager at my bank taught me to work. She said, don't just don't just like take whatever paperwork is on your desk and fill 8 hours with it, get it done as fast as you can and come ask me for more work. And so like trying to find ways to be efficient. And it's just in my nature to be like really efficient, really organized. So I would kind of progress in my career. I worked in insurance adjusting. I also like eventually got to this hedge fund where I was like, hey, I think we can do this a little better. We can organize it this way. What about this? What about that? And that wasn't always appreciated.
Right.
So you put people on the back foot. And there's a word for that. It's called an intrapreneur. It's the entrepreneur inside of a company. But it just never got me that far with those companies that I was working for. But I was at the hedge fund in 2008 when Bear Stearns and Lehman went down, that whole gig went down. And so all of a sudden my very like spicy attitude about fixing things and just getting into it was like really appreciated for several months as we navigated what was going on there. And eventually I left that fund, personal reasons. And how I got to where I am today is that I made a jump from that into helping my sister build a business. So my first company was actually with my sister, and she's an artist. So I took a 180 out of finance and I went into the art world.
Wow.
And went into the licensing industry and consumer products and Disney and Mattel and the Comic Cons and just like this whole other crazy, the opposite of finance world, right? So that actually, we built a global brand. It was so much fun. I got to do whatever I wanted, just build this business. So as we were doing this, we started crowdfunding projects for ourselves on Indiegogo and Kickstarter. We were one of the first, and at that time, that was a long time ago, but we were one of the first to crowdfund our own book very successfully, like an illustrated art book that we worked on together and all kinds of things like that. So when I eventually moved to LA in 2012, and I was working out of like a co-working space in Venice Beach, I was hearing about this thing called the Jobs Act and different kind of crowdfunding, which I interpreted as meaning I can turn my sister's fans into shareholders, which it was like this merge of my past life identity in financial services with this like current identity of being an entrepreneur. So that wasn't, that's actually what got me into the space to begin with. Right. And I got really interested in the real estate crowdfunding because I have humbly, I understood this much later, but quite like a visionary streak and understanding of what is going to be next. And when I heard real estate and crowdfunding together, I thought that was going to be the most amazing thing in the world.
Yeah. and it did. It actually did become like the most amazing thing in the world.
It did. And so I went to one of the very first conferences, which ironically was at the San Diego Convention Center. And I was used to Comic-Con. I was used to hundreds of thousands of people, bright lights, costumes, craziness, fun. And I drive down to San Diego and it's like this tiny little conference in this small room. It was really dark. And I felt like I was in the Twilight Zone because it was just not what I have did for 8 years. So anyway, so I was like, okay, this is really crazy and weird, but it was so fascinating. And I met all the early companies, all of them, had conversations with everybody that I could. And I ended up joining Patch of Land as, to build their brand, I basically became an evangelist as well for real estate crowdfunding. That was very much a role that I undertook. That's just in my nature. I love, if I get excited about something that I think is going to help other people, you can be pretty sure I'm going to tell everybody about it. And that's how I felt about crowdfunding.
Oh, very cool. That's awesome. Now you've also, done something pretty cool, which a lot of people aspire to do, which is write a book, right? And that's, I'm actually pretty impressed. Because, I'll be honest with you, I haven't read it yet, but I've seen it and I heard you talk about it a little bit because you have a podcast as well, right? We'll get to that maybe. But let's talk about this book, Productive Intuition. Just the title is intriguing and it's about, the subtitle, Connecting to the Subtle. So what drove you about that? Tell me a little bit about the book. I'd love to kind of dig deep on that a little bit.
The book is really about honoring yourself. It's about finding what I call inner authority. And, I go into what intuition is, how it works. I get into a lot of the science of it because I love to understand things. And it came about because over the past, I would say, the past 5 years or so, I started to have what many describe as an awakening, or like a series of awakenings. And so I would have like everything ranging from mystical experiences to just burnout as well. And so I had to really learn who I was at a very, very deep level. And where I landed is that I didn't want to sort of go off and meditate on a mountaintop and kind of leave life, because sometimes you have these experiences and sometimes your life falls apart and you're like, well, then it wasn't for me. I should just, go live in the jungle or,
Sure.
And it just doesn't resonate with me because I have a husband, I have a house, I have dogs, I have, and I was like, well, how am I supposed to put these two things together and still be grounded in like life and work and society, but still be really understanding of where my true power comes from and who I really am. Yeah. So that's really what the book is about. It's about the relationship that we have with ourselves and finding a level of power that for the most part, when we're very left brain oriented, and if we don't have any kind of rooting in faith or spirituality, that we're just like, basically, I'm this personality, I'm supposed to do this, I'm like making sure that other people think I'm that, and we don't actually have any power. And so to me, it is very subtle. It's like listening to my body, it's like listening to different signals, and that all opened up when I had this awakening. And now for me, it's all about integrating it. So that's why the book is kind of this integration. It's productive, which is very left brain, masculine, right. Very action. And then intuition, which is more right brain, kind of feminine, passive, even though it's not passive. So that is it. That's just like, it's for an understanding of who we are at our core and how to live in that every day. Yeah. And still get to have a life that is okay to have, and not that it's like bad. It's not bad to want money. It's not bad to, all that kind of, all those narratives that come up.
A lot of people, like you said, have that relationship to those feelings inside of them. And especially when they've had these experiences with money or finances and things like that they seem almost, antithesis to that spiritual side of them. And this is something I'm very passionate about as well. So it's interesting. I'm actually going to check out your book. I will, for sure, because it's something that I'm, as a very spiritual person myself, but Judaism, which I practice, is a very practical spirituality. I mean, we have tons and tons and tons of like action, like based laws that we keep. Like every part of our life is totally dictated in terms, not dictated, but like do this. But there's a lot of laws that we keep that are going on, constantly through how we relate to things, how we do business, how we think, how we talk. Tons. So, but it can be very, like you said, you might want to just like think, oh, spirituality, I just need to go sit up on a mountain. We're the exact opposite of that. The more we can be involved in the physical world, that's what we're created to do. We're created to be here. We're created to live life. We're created to, have interactions with people and with things, and to find the spirituality in the mundane. That's really what it's all about. So I'm impressed by this kind. I feel like that's how you describe your book. That what you are, looking to do with that. So I'm interested in checking it out. I'll give you my feedback for sure.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, it is. It's all about integration. It's like you said, like if you don't take action on something in the mundane, because there's so much spiritual, so to speak, in the mundane, and yet there's a lot of stuff out there that tells us that spiritual is like leave your body and get out and be up here and be really disconnected and like it makes me dizzy to think about. But in reality, it's like, no, it's like very heart-centered and it's very relationship oriented. And it's like, how can I just figure out who I really am and just be the best I can be? And that feeling is subtle at first, and then it's overpowering, and then you live it. And it's the most amazing thing, which I didn't have before.
Wow. So you basically, it sounds like you came up with this approach in your own life just to cope and be productive with with the situations you were in, and then kind of sharing that with others. So that's awesome.
Yeah, thanks.
Awesome. So let's transition a little because I want to hear about your podcast as well, right? Real Wealth, Real Health. Did I get that right?
Oh, you did. Yeah. Yeah. So that was another one of those things that I thought I was, I started the podcast and I really wanted to speak about wealth and health, which are things that are important to me as I was unraveling these paradigms for myself. Because it was when I was going through it and I was realizing, holy crap, I had everything wrong, sort of like, I sort of did and I didn't. My heart was always in the right place, but how I thought of them was not. And then what ended up happening is that I just ended up doing a lot of personal writing, which got me on stage when I did this big talk and it went on Goldcast. And so it ended up being like, instead of writing about wealth and health, I ended up going into like really personal transformational stuff, which comes through in this book. But then I repositioned it when I joined Alpha Investing. So where I'm at right now with the private equity, and I'm a partner there. And so we transitioned it to kind of being what I wanted it to be in the beginning, which is talking about healthy financial foundation, like speaking to people who have been successful doing this and then asking them their definition of wealth and what wealth means to them. And so invariably, every person has succeeded and they each have an individual, incredible story, lessons, strategies, tactics. A lot of it's real estate based. I believe real estate's the foundation of financial stability. And their whole approach to life and success and everything is not rooted in wealth financially at all. It's rooted in so many other things. And so you see that in everyone, that they're coming at it from a place of service, of heart-centered, and it's not what you would expect if you think that wealth is all about money. So that's what the podcast is about.
I love that. And it's interesting that the multifamily space, which, we both kind of run in these circles around, there is a large percentage, I'd say, the vast majority of the people that I come in contact with are growing people that are not focused on money per se. Mm-hmm. They're really more about, like you said, like growth and not necessarily spiritual, but I would say that they're focused on wealth as kind of life, like being free, financially free, and being, helping others to get there, but in a giving, like helping way. And I found this and you were involved in, in financial services, in banking, in hedge funds. I would venture to say that the attitude of the people that you dealt with in those places were not necessarily the same type of behaviors.
Yeah, no, not at all. No, it was, and so that was my experience before. And it was very that cliche of what money or, wealth was. And that's where I came from. That's how I grew up career wise. And then one of the reasons when people ask me about, why maybe I stayed in the real estate industry and everything is I love it. I think it's fascinating and really interesting. I love all the structuring. I love all the opportunities. But mostly I love the people because they are spiritual in a way. I mean, you can define spiritual however you want, but to me, personal development and personal growth, that's all that is. It's like, who am I? And all the biohacking and all of the mindset stuff, it's all the same. We're also trying to figure out, like, how do I thrive? And then you always get to this place when you're thriving, especially if it's yours. Because by the time you get to a big corporation, nothing is anybody's, so they don't care. But in the real estate space that we're in, people really care and they give back in a humongous way. Yeah. And I've just met the most incredible people that just give me so much faith in humanity. And I wouldn't change it for anything, really. I love this industry.
That's awesome. I totally agree with you on that. It is incredible. I love it every day. The people I speak with, it's just, you feel like you're on the same wavelength and it just makes sense. It makes you happy to be doing what you're doing. And, I don't think there, unfortunately, are a lot of people in the world that can say that about their jobs, but I totally love what I do. I love the industry I'm in. And finding opportunities to help, especially with affordable housing, and you're actually doing a service, when you are, changing the paradigm of some people thinking slumlords, owning real estate and they're out there for the money and taking advantage of the tenants. That's really not the case. I mean, the vast majority of the people that I work with are people that literally they're going in there, they're bettering these communities. They're making it a better place to live. Of course, they're making money. It is a business.
Yeah.
But in doing so, I mean, there are thousands of ways to run a business, but to run a business that your focus is, how can I help people and how can I simultaneously making money, give back and make people have a great place to call home. I mean, it's just incredible.
Yeah, it is. I agree. I totally agree. I always say, like, as investors, we have an opportunity to change someone's lives, like as a real estate investor, like, and there's studies about how the environment that we live in, not just like from an epigenetic perspective, but where we live has like a direct impact on how we feel, on about ourselves, on what we think is possible. And so if you help somebody live in a place that they can feel good about and they feel good about themselves, and so especially so much for the kids that live there, I mean, it all starts there. If they can believe in themselves and live in a good place, then we stand a chance at having a better society, like longer term.
100%. And we to have that responsibility also is, I think, an awesome way to kind of take that by the helm and really ride that, and not just kind of sit back. I mean, yes, you can invest passively, you can be involved in real estate in so many different ways, but to actually lead that and to lead that change, I think is very inspirational. So glad we're doing what we're doing. I want to transition now. This is the final segment of our show. We go into called the Final Four. I know time flies, but we ask all of our guests 4 questions. And so the first question for you is, what is the worst job that you ever had?
That's actually really hard for me. I think the worst job was when I worked in the accounting office, or like the admin accounting for the local hardware store. And I was like just literally pushing paper, which I really disliked. And I had way too much energy to be a clerk. So that for me was the worst, especially when we had to do year-end inventory and like counting nails and screws and bolts. That was it.
Very cool. Yeah, that sounds like, a round peg in a square hole type of position. Oh, yeah. What's a book you've read that's given you a paradigm shift?
Women Who Run with the Wolves by Clarissa Pinkola Estes. I say it's a must read for every woman and maybe even men. It's rooted in mythology and how we embody mythology as humans. And it just gives us incredible perspective around being a woman and pulling that power out through these archetypes. And totally, to me, it's a Bible, and changed my life.
Okay. Well, we'll definitely put that one on the reading list. Women Who Run with Wolves.
Yes.
Very cool. Put that in the show notes for anyone looking to check that book out.
Yeah.
Third question for you. What is a skill or talent that you would like to learn?
I would love to be able to sing. I think that it's the most liberating, empowering, like fierce, amazing thing that I'm in awe of it. And I wish I could sing because I want to have that experience of whatever they feel. I would love to be able to sing.
I mean, music in general, I love, and singing is definitely part of that, but it comes with, like you said, it's just an expression. It's an art and it's a way to express yourself. So yeah, why? I mean, voice lessons in your near future?
I should try. I mean, I'm not that bad when I've done like chanting and like, like yoga and things like that. And actually when I first started to learn, I have a yoga practice. When I first started to chant Om, it would make me angry because I was so disconnected. I didn't like it. And I was like, I don't want to Om. I want to work out. Like I was not into it. And then it's become like my favorite part of it, because even just in that one sound, it pulls a lot of energy out. Like once you connect to that, to the subtle of it, it's very powerful. So I can get there, but like, if I could like sing, that may be another life, but I would love that.
Okay. Well, there you go. And the fourth and final question, what does success mean to you?
Success to me, it means being able to feel really comfortable in my body and in my life and in who I am, not being afraid of anything, what other people think. So I've had just such a paradigm shift around redirecting validation towards being internal instead of externally oriented. And so to me, success is when I can live in my truth and my authentic nature every day. And basically that gives me the ability to do what I want.
Right.
And that's all I've ever wanted, was a level of freedom of just being able to do whatever I wanted. And at the end of it, it still becomes in service of others, which is really interesting, because one might hear it and think, well, that's really selfish. But it's actually becomes the opposite. When we're really rooted in ourselves, we recognize that it's you get filled with something so powerful that wants to give back. So to me, success is having that level of comfort in life, in that you're just overflowing with wanting to help others. To me, that's real success.
That's beautiful. The reason why I asked this question is because I love to hear the plethora of answers that we get from all of our guests, because it is totally subjective. What does it mean to you? And to everyone, it means something different, but this is something, kind of different that I don't think anyone, sometimes you have a little similarities. This one is definitely unique. And so I appreciate that. Right on. Love that. Where can our listeners find you or reach out to you if they want to?
Yeah. So I always tell people that I'm really easy to find because of my name. So if you just plug AdaPia into any platform, LinkedIn, Clubhouse, I'm on Clubhouse a lot now, LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever, I'll come up. I have a website. So I love to connect with people. So I always say, reach out to me on whatever platform you want. You can find out more about me at adapiaderico.com. And then my book has a website, productiveintuition.com, which also has some information about me.
Awesome. And we'll definitely put those links in the show notes and to your book so people can find it directly on Amazon, including myself. And, thank you. This has been fun. It's always a shame when we have this time limit, because we could really keep going. I enjoyed the conversation, learned a lot about you and about what you're doing, and more importantly, who you are and what kind of drives you, which I think is awesome. And this is a great platform. I'd like to give that for our listeners to find out more as well. So thank you.
This is who I am, and that's how I like to connect with people. So I really appreciate it.
100%. No, it's really my pleasure. And to all of our listeners, remember, the best advice comes only when you ask. Real quick, I have one question for you. Did you like this episode? If you did, I want to ask you a huge favor. See, the biggest thing that helps this podcast grow and that will spread this message to the whole world is that if you leave a review, a rating, and subscribe to the podcast. What that does is it basically tells the platforms that this podcast is out on is that you like my stuff and I'm doing something right. So take a few seconds out of your day, hit that subscribe button, leave a rating or review. I would be extremely grateful. Also, I want to hear from you guys. So I want to hear some feedback. If you have any questions for future episodes, please find me on LinkedIn. Send me a DM, a connection request, Yona Weiss, and I'd love to hear from you.